I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3, presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
Welcome back to Tech Talk on Double T 97.3 and Double T 97.3.com, a Wednesday edition. Thank you for joining us. Clint Scott, Dr. Mike Gustafson, Ben Portman. Keep hitting us up on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Thoughts, comments, questions, reactions. It is the juice. Time for some headlines. Tonight, it is the high school fan zone at 6 o'clock over on 100.7 The Score. Coaches from Friendship, Lubbock, Cooper, and Liberty will be live here in the First United Bank studio, telling you all about the happenings of their seasons. 6 o'clock, 107.7 Yes FM. Lady Raider basketball returns to action. Certainly in a slump, trying to find some footing. They'll be at TCU. The nice thing is, they can beat TCU because the last time they won, well, it was here at home, but it was against the Frogs. So
yeah, and they've got some more people healthy, unfortunately.
That is true.
And maybe
TCU.
Yeah, TCU, because they came here shortly after their little 2-game hiatus, and yeah.
Which still such, to look back was such an odd
bonkers
story,
yeah.
And some of the players that they got that just happened to be state champions, and then like a volleyball player and stuff like that. If it wasn't TCU, I would have really enjoyed that story because that's really cool. But I wouldn't say you want them to have success, but hopefully they won't have success tonight as Lady Raider basketball looking for a much needed win over in Fort Worth. Again, 6 o'clock. You can hear Fink and Chuck on the call as always. Red Raiders softball will play their first midweek game of the season. That's actually going on right now. That was a 2 o'clock first pitch, but they're facing New Mexico. We'll give you an update whenever that game is all said and done. They're coming off a really nice weekend in the North Texas tournament where they went a perfect 5-0. A couple come from behind victories, including a walk-off of Minnesota. New Mexico, Gus, also played in the North Texas tournament. They entered today at 4-13. However, they did not face the Red Raiders or have the same success in Denton as they went 1-4. So we'll give you an update as we find out scores from that one.
That's interesting. Some of the high schools around here canceled outdoor stuff today.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding, just because of the air quality and stuff. So
yeah, they had like some of the soccer games, I think, for like LISD and stuff were I think one was moved to today, so I don't know if it's like probably a double move there, and
you know what?
Maybe we try again.
And the air may be a little bit better later today. I mean, according to the weather thing I saw this morning, that the wind was going to shift just enough out of the northeast to push this stuff west of Lubbock.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be okay to play these evening games, but I was told that this morning that they were keeping all the recess and PE and that type of stuff was staying inside today.
Last night, of course, if you were trying to forget it, you might just close your ears for a little bit. Texas Tech loses to Texas 81-69 at home. You have a loss where at the end of the first half it was 47-23. But probably fair to say that that's probably not what you'll remember from this game. I mean, whenever you think about it, however long in advance, you're probably going to be thinking about a certain Brock Cunningham incident, incredibly dirty play there on the sideline, and then a poor response from the fans as well. Not all the fans, but certain fans. You saw a kid get drug out. That was odd.
Our man Tony Bradford.
I know, how about
involved.
that?
That was I saw that video and like, man, that dude came. Whoever that guy was, and you look at it like, that's Tony Bradford, man. Like in his new capacity, working security at the game, and he went over there and latched onto that dude. And that dude was Ooh.
And that wasn't like a small kid either, but that goes into the Division I athlete against an average person. And if you were wondering if he could manhandle an average person, that was, the mayor, pretty strong cat.
Yeah. And that dude was, Wonder what that was like when you sober up and go, Dad?
Out of all the rough mornings you can have, he's probably having an incredibly rough morning. Like, I don't know what the... Wonder what that's like the punishment side or anything like that individually. I'm not going to guess at it, but it can't be good.
I saw the charges. There are like 3 charges that he was, on his booking deal. But I was just thinking, how's that work on the, like, our mom and dad sitting at home watching it going, oh, wow, that guy got thrown out. Then somebody knows somebody that texts and went, hey, that was little Johnny, like, you're, anyway. Keep going. I
will say if he was one that had camped out and saw that, especially an early camper, I'm not going to say I get it completely, but I was certainly there. That is your headlines today. That is the juice. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Bobby Hot Dogs suggests that we Google what is Grimace supposed to be. Nary a gumdrop to be found. This on the chat line. Why do they keep playing Walton 4-on-5? He plays so timid, afraid to make a mistake, doesn't move, doesn't pass well. Last night, it's hard to get a read, Gus, and tell me if you just disagree. Just from that first half, it felt like half of the team was. You know what? What do we say about the game of basketball? Right? Sometimes you have to let the game come to you.
Sure.
And on one hand, it looked like you had half doing the exact opposite of that and way forcing the issue in a bad way. Then the other half was letting the game come to them. They get it and they just throw it to the side. Like, I don't want anything with it.
Let me just ask this question, and this is me being kind of a wiseacre, but who you putting out there?
Oh,
why do we keep putting Walton out there? Who you got in mind? Mm-hmm. Look down on the bench, man. Yeah, you keep Kerwin Walton out there. Did he play good? No. He had a 30-minute game and didn't get a rebound. He's got strengths and he's got weaknesses, all right? But look down that bench and tell me if you think you see you know what? We should put old Joe Blow in. He'll fix things. Joe Blow's had all year long to fix things, and it didn't happen. And by the way, if – for me, the jury's still out on EY because he's so young. But you put him and Lindsey in, and it's like gas can.
You know what I was going to say?
For the other team.
Sure.
There's no post defense there.
What Texas did is what they were supposed to, because they said, okay, there's no Warren Washington. You haven't been consistent with your post play with the depth pieces behind it. Lindsey has had some nice moments. Jennings has had some nice moments. Yalaho had a nice moment the last time out. If I'm being, like, with my first half judgment, the guy who I thought had the most promising first half and it still wasn't good, it might be Yalaho, because at least he had a couple of plays there where you were trying to keep it close and you were trying to cut it back. Had gotten to about 12 points or that first double-digit deficit, and you were trying to kind of track back. And he had a couple nice plays. He had a nice roll to the basket, nice finish. But past that, it was your guards didn't play well, and it's easy to go, well, why is so-and-so playing right now when everybody had a bad first half?
Right.
Like, just and to all the question of would you match Texas, who I thought was coming in with their backs against the wall.
Sure.
Would they have that kind of dog-cornered, going to bite the hand that's, just reaching out at them? That's the Texas you got, and you did not match it at all.
Did they play with more edge? 100%. And I'm not sitting here acting like, that K-Dub had a great game or whatever. I'm not trying to say that. And so I partly agree. But I'm not singling him out. If you're singling him out, you got a problem. Yeah. But, all of this, there's a lot of theories and stuff coming, and keep them coming on the text line. But if you're trying to diagnose this and we don't do that or whatever, hey, you know what? We're a completely different team with Warren Washington sitting over there.
You're handcuffed to small ball right now.
My
That's just
God,
the way it
dude.
is.
And so, all the diagnoses, and we weren't this and we were that. Hey, Warren Washington's sitting over there, man.
Tech Tac, more discussion of that next.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3, presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
It's Tech Talk here on Double T 97.3 and DoubleT973.com. Keep hitting us up on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Plenty of your thoughts already rolling in. Clint Scott, Dr. Mike Gustafson, Ben Poorman behind the glass. We got this on the Yates Flooring Center chat line from Steven. Seems like Pop and others went down the commode when they got sick. Well, and then, they came back and have won some games. And so the past two games have been alarming because it felt like you would figure out a way to and maybe you can credit this as well if you say that, being honest, without Warren Washington, UCF, Texas, bad matchups, right? Mm-hmm. Teams that can effectively attack when you are really lacking size and not just thin at size. And I still think, Robert Jennings can produce. I think
He's
again,
just a 6'7" guy guarding 6'11s.
And the bigger issue to me is inconsistency. One, with your size, but the other side is you can win with small ball, right? But what do you have to do to win with small ball? You got to hit shots, and that is something you have not done, and that's where my current nerves are, Gus, is that it feels like we have kept on waiting, like, hey, Pop Isaacs will get that switch, turned at some point. But last night, and maybe this is just too much instant of a reaction, but in the first half, something that didn't help is tentativeness and then bad shot selection to me. I mean, it felt like everyone on the court was like, okay, Pop is that guy, you go make a play. And then when they were leaning on him to make a play and he wasn't, then everybody else kind of backed down as well. So it was like across the board, a bad performance just gets magnified. When you also add in, you had a terrible matchup size-wise. So if you couldn't do the things to win at small ball, and then the other side too, I don't think you did kind of the little things that win you games. The intensity side, the hustle side, it felt like for the first time that was even lacking, at least in the first half. That's how you get blown out, and that's why you did get blown out.
Yeah, with Warren not on the floor, like the things that happened when Warren was there. First of all, he was given a lot of credit by McCasland for being a really good passer. And you don't look at your 6'10" guy and go, see that guy? But because you're expecting that to be the nimble point guard or whatever. But when he's there, when he's on the floor, all that high pick and roll stuff, how many times a game would you see him, they'd be in their set, he'd go out top, and set a pick and either be a classic sort of pick and roll situation and then the offense creates and flows off of that. I remember seeing one of the, Seth Greenberg types after we played. It was one of the home games, maybe like UCF or one of those games, Cincinnati, BYU, maybe BYU, but and it was showing like how good Pop was in the pick and roll game with like 4 different options off of that high pick, and just how he can go here, he can leverage himself, and get the foul call, and then like all the things, and like perfect. Here's one example. Click, 10-second video with the little diagrams drawn there. So it was very coachy kind of stuff, and I thought, very interesting, and none of that's there now. Think about it. If EY,
Jennings or
Lindsey, those guys, if they go out, and specifically Lindsey, Jennings, if those guys go out to set the high screen, and it's the little handoff deal, are you guarding them? I mean, are you guarding them? No. The two dudes just collapse or sink or drop or whatever you want to call it. They come off to the guard. Like, you're worried about Pop. You're worried about Toussaint. You're in that situation, and so the lack of Warren Washington has created real difficulty for those guards. And and I would even venture to say that part of the reason why they aren't shooting well, now there are open looks that get missed. Don't get me wrong. There are also open looks that got missed a month ago. Mm-hmm. But by and large, you're
not going to hit every shot.
No, exactly. And so I'm not saying they're shooting it well. Blame it all on this. But one thing that's happening is bigger people now are chasing those dudes around because you're not worried about EY. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll take my chances. It's the classic case, and Bobby Knight didn't invent this, but he used to say it all the time. I'm going to try it. And Belichick was the same way. I'm going to try to take away what you do best and make somebody else beat me. That's classic. Just like you didn't pitch to Cash last year, you want to make somebody else beat you. Whatever. Pick the football analogy, but right now, hey, Chiron, you got it, big boy. Hey,
and also
EY.
don't be a liability on defense
Jennings.
On the other side.
Right, we ain't got to that yet, dude. We ain't got there. And listen, I was in my playing career, I was way more of EY and those dudes, or maybe Jennings. Where I was exposed more often than not, at least on my senior year. And so do not miss it.
Who was the kid that came in that was a manager and took a charge? Because that was me. Forgot his name.
Do not misinterpret me as dogging on a kid here.
Yeah. You're just saying you don't have the horses in the barn right now.
That's exactly it. So, and I'm not. Those dudes the effort may be there in terms of how hard they play and care and try. So I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I don't want this to be misinterpreted that I'm just railing a kid.
And you're also not burying them yet.
But the fact is when those dudes are on the floor, and when Jennings is 6'7" or 6" or whatever he is, guarding a 7-footer. And he has to overdo things, and then he gets in foul trouble. I mean, all of this stuff is easily traced back to the lack of size. Mm-hmm. And you don't look down the bench and go, "Oh, well, there's Damarian Williams." Hey, whew. I mean, and again, not dogging on him. I'm just saying the answers aren't over there. And so benching K-Dub because he's not getting enough rebounds or whatever. Who the hell you got? You can play with 4?
You've got to have better play. I mean, This is a no out of your guards right now.
No margin for error.
This is where you're going to have to lean for the guards the rest of the way out. It's Tech Talk on Double T 97.3.
The podcast that finishes your workday in a very Red Raider way. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3, presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
Welcome back to Tech Talk, a Wednesday edition. Thank you for joining us and making us part of your afternoon. Hit us up on the Yates Point Exchange chat line, thoughts, comments, reactions, all that welcome there. You can also call us on the Visual Edge IT hotline. That number is 806-771-0973. Clint Scott, Dr. Mike Gustafson, Ben Poorman behind the glass. Let's get today's play of the day.
Back to throw as Mahomes does. Deep left side. It's intercepted. Drop. Oh! It's caught by Jakeem Grant down the near sideline. Touchdown, Red Raiders. Oh, my. Well, that's the way to break it.
That ball was intercepted by the Longhorns, and then Devin Lauderdale just clobbers the Texas defender who picked off that pass. And when the ball bounced up into the air after that, Jakeem caught it out of the air.
Let's be honest, this is therapy session after the heaping pile of garbage we saw on the court last night.
Oh, like the approach.
This kind of brings similar vibes. Have you guys ever seen those videos where they're a fan of a team, someone's a fan of a team, right, and they lost horrendously? Like, for example, the Cowboys just got the smacking laid on them by the Green Bay Packers. And that same fan minutes later plays like Madden, so to speak, and just whips the Packers to burn off their frustration, to blow off steam as best they can. And feel like this was the right approach to take today.
NCAA coming out this summer. I'm not saying I used to do that, but it may or may not happen. No, I love those. Like take that video game version that just really ruined my day in real life. Now it's all better. This on the chat line. There went the chat line. Here we go. Comes back. Red Raider 2 Gun said, very disappointing night all around. Shelley says, I like Gus fired up like this. Keep it going full steam. To our man what was the better drug out of a stadium, him or the possum? I'm gonna go with the possum.
Ooh, all right, yeah. Say that again. Now, what was the question?
Who was the better living thing being thrown out of a stadium this season? Was it the possum or our boy from the student section?
Years ago, there was a fox, like when Mayfield was still the starter here.
Yep.
Was Cunningham thrown out of the stadium? That was pretty good.
Oh, what a tool. This from Bullfighter, that's not an excuse. I've been blackout drunk before and haven't acted like that in the game. That dude was on something else. Bobby Hot Dog says, getting arrested nowadays is even worse with the advent of the Lubbock County Mugshots Facebook page.
Yeah, and he's in there. That's making the rounds again. Yeah, just the way it goes, I guess. Tough deal.
Down the Commode Fellow Americans album name. This on the chat line, the horses ain't in the barn and the jockey done got fat. If you follow the team, it's exactly like what Gus is saying. We've known since this team was put together that we had a lack of size and depth. The second Cambridge went down, we knew we couldn't afford to lose Washington, and now here we are, and this is the result of lack of depth at the big positions. Got to figure it out before this thing spirals out of control.
Yeah, we knew that size was going to be a problem just with the roster in general, but especially once Cambridge went down. I remember talking with Dickens then, and Clint, you and I probably had this conversation, so there's no revelation here, but me just thinking, our depth is we're exposed now at the big spots. Like, what we can't afford is anything to happen to Warren Washington. Like, you could have rolled with one of the guards going down, but then it's Warren. Illness followed by the foot, and like you just gotta. You gotta be kidding me.
Well, and
again, that lack of depth in our size is exactly what. Unfortunate injury for sure.
And the lack of depth, like you said, this isn't news. We've talked about this for a while, where you're kind of watching some games, through your fingers because you were going, and not even the injury side, but hey, what if he gets into a couple quick fouls, a game like that, and all of a sudden you don't have him from a foul standpoint or an injury issue, and ultimately that's what you're going through. Of course, you had the sickness part too there for a few games, but you can still win games without him in the lineup. And the issue is the past two games, you haven't done some of those. Like you've played way too wild in transition. You were trying to balance out with your guards, and I keep bringing up Pop Isaacs, but I don't think Joe Toussaint has necessarily had anywhere close to the two back-to-back games that he's capable of having. The making the right play went out the window last night in the first half, and you had a couple open shots, but that's the problem, is you only had a couple open shots, and past that, I felt like you forced a lot of things offensively. So you know, and they know this, if you aren't going to have any sort of bigs really to lean on consistently, those are the things you have to do to win games. Like, you have to play small ball the right way if you are being forced to play small ball. If you're doing four guards and then a post that, isn't a giant or that center type size that you think, which even then, it's positionless basketball at this point. Not everybody has an Edie or something like that rolling around on their team. So, how do you get back to playing like that? And again, I think yes, it goes to hitting shots, but you also have to keep finding good shots, and I don't think you've done that the past couple of games necessarily.
Yep, I agree. And I think teams have, certain. I mean, if we're playing a guard-oriented team, it might be a blessing, even if just because not that it would be easier, but just because the matchup would be a little more favorable. But this on both ends exposed right now, and teams with quality big men can expose us. And West Virginia's guy that's been hurt all year, they're 7-footers back and playing well. I mean, we got a problem on Saturday.
Yeah.
And, and that's a West Virginia team that's, hadn't been great playing with an interim coach. And, mercy. I mean, it's just and I'm only saying that just to say if you're walking around thinking, oh, it'll be fine, West Virginia's bad, like, man, this isn't a good matchup for us either.
Yeah.
And what I don't know is, I mean, I suspect that if Washington dealing with a foot injury, it's probably not like he's able to run up and down and condition and do any of the kind of stuff that would get you ready to play for a long time at a decent level. And so let's say he does play on Saturday. You can get 20 minutes out of him. You're going to get, 8 points. I mean, can you expect him to be clicking? Is he going to turn it over a couple times? I mean, you would think the answer to all that stuff is, not in his favor. But, because it's not like, well, the injury was to his pinky finger on his left hand or something, in a way that, he could still condition and do a bunch of stuff. Man, that's his feet. Tough deal in that game, I'm worried about it. I'm worried about it because you 2 road games coming up, and both of them will look bad on a resume if you don't win them both. And
it's like the perfect storm, because neither of them will look good on the resume, or they'll look really, really bad. But at the same time, like, they've gotten everybody back, or they've gotten some of their young guys like Oklahoma State playing a lot better than what they were, and they've got a lot of size. So it's like, I mean, you have to be very, very, very careful over the next couple of games. And they're winnable games. Don't get me wrong. It's not all doom and gloom. You have the capability to go beat these teams, but you have to play. I mean, it's not a shocker to say this. You have to play much better basketball in all phases of the game. It's Tech Talker and Double T 97.3.
The podcast put together with Red Raider fans in mind. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3. Presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
Back to Tech Talk. You got us on Double T 97.3, doublet97.3.com, over on 100.7 Score. It is the High School Fan Zone, tonight's edition, featuring coaches from Friendship, Lubbock, Cooper, and Liberty. And then 6 o'clock over on 107.7 Yes FM, you can hear Lady Raider basketball. They're at TCU, looking to do 2 things tonight, Gus. 1, get a win, find a way to get a win. And then 2, with that win, it would be a regular season sweep of the Frogettes, I assume they go by.
That'd be big.
Yeah. Last night, of course, you have a very disappointing result. You weren't the only game in action, though, in the Big 12. I would say one very non-surprising result, and then one eyebrow raiser. Houston beat Cincinnati at home. Not shocking there.
Nope.
67-59. And that was a game that still never felt like it was as close as it ended up being. And then Kansas, they lose at home to BYU, and they had a 12-point lead in this game. They lose at home 76-68.
First time to lose a game at home in which they led at halftime since 2017.
And I think the latest loss, again, this doesn't really mean anything. It's just you get something like this and you have a lot of, depending on how you look at it, fun numbers or surprising numbers. It's like the latest loss in Allen Fieldhouse since like 1984 in the season. So, but for BYU, they were put in as a lock, and I don't think that would have been different by any means. But if you are doing just the record game and not looking at the net and things like that, which BYU's net has been good to great all year long, but for BYU, that was a huge, go ahead and they're in the tournament. I mean, I think they could lose out and sit at 8 and 10, and they're in the NCAA tournament.
It feels that way.
Yeah, that was a huge win.
Yep, good win for them.
And also, I mean, again, this is part of the bad side from last night. For Texas, they were in desperate need of a defining type win late in the season, and they get that. So I would say for 3 teams, well, really not Houston, for 2 teams, big wins for the case to the tournament. And I think the Texas one, they needed it way more than what BYU did, again, but BYU's is go ahead and, like I said, put the stamp down in the tournament. We didn't even talk about Monday night's results. Baylor gets a road win on Monday night against TCU. They win that one 62-54. And then Kansas State, 94-90. What's Tang's record? Is it 12-1 in overtime or something like that?
It's undefeated.
Yeah, and they had a 25-point lead.
It's a D1 record for for overtime wins without a loss, and an amazing streak. And they gave away a monster lead, and then found a way to get it done in overtime. And again, I'm sitting there looking at that, going, okay, there's that West Virginia team. We're about to go deal with them.
And, I mean, if you're counting rest days, too, it's just a day's difference, but still.
Right.
I mean, for you with what you're dealing with, trying to make sure everyone's healthy, I mean, 24 hours can be a world of difference. This on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Going to hit us up there as well. From Shelley, agreed, Clint, the Aldine nearly caused an aneurysm. Steven said a friend worked with Chick Hearns on Lakers radio. Reports not a nice man. I went to their suite at the 90s Clippers game.
That really is interesting.
I can actually confirm that because I read Al Michaels' autobiography, and he talked about his brief stint with the Lakers in the late 60s, and he, too, didn't have a bright connection with
interesting
with Chick Hearn.
This from Raiders' dad. Actually,
that's interesting. Yeah.
Actually, Clint, I am living my truth. We won that game.
Yeah,
I
like it. Good work. I like it.
Keep living.
Go hang out with that dude.
Yeah. What did you think of the? We haven't really gotten to this play specifically, but what did you think of the just whole situation, starting with the Cunningham hockey check?
Yeah. I mean, it's a dirty play. By no measure is that anything. At very first live eye glance, like dude diving for a ball, and then but it felt like how did they collide? And this is me, sitting way up there, and how did they collide? Like, how'd that work? Because like you think maybe it was an angle or whatever, and of course we've all seen it a million times. We saw it in the arena last night. That's just that's just Cunningham getting beat to the ball and like phony ass toughness.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's like it's just phony toughness, and because he gets this reputation as being this grinder guy and whatever. And
there was last year, if I heard him get called a glue guy one more time, God, I was gonna throw up.
I mean, it's all the sort of press level announcer, that kind of crap. Jay Billis did a deal. They were calling him. He was calling a game of theirs in Texas, I think, in non-conference. I think maybe very early conference. And that was the guy he went and talked to. The 6-year man. And hey, whatever, man. But yeah, it's just phony toughness. And and he's trolled Tech fans for a while, and usually done it getting his butt kicked. I mean, he was 3-7 against Tech coming into that game, and but just the play was. I mean, you just thank goodness that nobody got hurt on the deal, and namely our guy. I would have cared if Cunningham had cracked his collarbone on the deal or slipped on a banana peel or whatever. But and then just the troll and the fan, like getting out there as the replays are getting shown and the room's heating up, and then he's got the hands going, like bring it, and meanwhile they're over there reviewing it, going, "Hey, we're tossing this guy because that's like the dirtiest of flagrant." And it's kind of one of those things. It's not as blunt as Brittany Griner just turning and punching a player in the face and landing the punch and getting one game, but it's as blatant as that.
Well, I mean, that's why it was an easy call to kick him out of the game.
Beckel gets 4 games for saying go sit the bleep down, and this guy skates. Give me a break.
It's every Red Raiders' favorite podcast. This is the Tech Talk Podcast from Double T 97.3, presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
Tech Talk, thanks for joining us here on a Wednesday edition. Good afternoon. Clint Scott, Dr. Mike Gustafson, Ben Poorman behind the glass. We are live from the First United Bank studio. You can call us on the Visual Edge IT hotline. That number is 806-771-0973. Take us anywhere with a mobile app, brought to you by Happy State Bank. We're also streaming live on Fox 34 News Now and on YouTube. If you would rather than the hotline, you can reach us on the Yates Flooring Center chat line. Thoughts, comments, questions, thoughts like this. Would like to see severe punishment handed down to students who got caught throwing anything on the court. Trespass them from all sports. Which brings us, if you didn't hear it or weren't there in person, this was what it sounded like last night with about 10 minutes to go in the game.
Listen. Hey, right here, everybody listen. Everything that gets thrown on the floor, we're going to get a technical foul. Listen to me. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. Nothing else on the floor. Am I clear?
Yeah, those, and I wouldn't have been one bit surprised if he had walked over there a couple minutes earlier. I think at that point, it was probably, I don't know at what level the information was transferred to him. He's in there in the huddle, probably working with his guys, getting them back focused on the game while stuff gets sorted out. Post fracas, and they're doing the review and all that. And probably somewhere in there he's made aware, like, hey, you guys are getting technicals because this crap's thrown on the floor. And maybe even, hey, would you come over here and calm this crowd down?
Like it didn't look like it was going to calm down. And I was with you. I was surprised it didn't happen, like a minute earlier, because I thought that's what you were headed for. And eventually you get there. And the dumb part of the whole thing to me, Gus, is they got the call right. They kicked him out. And I think this is probably more of just timing of who you're playing, how bad it's going, and I think you are just for those that did that and those that are throwing stuff were just felt like they were just waiting for an excuse, but they got the call right. I mean, Brock Cunningham had an incredibly dirty play, but they kicked him out, and this was happening before the decision was made.
And I think,
and he's a piece of crap. Don't get me wrong. He has been a piece of crap, and any sort of the verbal hate and all that stuff, whatever, he's earned it. And guess what? The other side is he loves it, and obviously was eating that up last night. But they got the call right.
Yeah, for a dude that spent his whole career as got averaging about 5 points a game, there sure is a lot of oxygen expended on his behalf. He's
that's a good point.
Yeah, a lot of I thought anyway. I was glad he did it.
He's like the player version of a clickbait artist, right?
Like
100%. He gets what he wants.
Sure, and he's
except the wins. I assume he wants the wins, and he hasn't gotten those every time. Although they certainly got it last night.
He's 4-7 against Texas Tech now. Had Coach Mack done that a couple minutes earlier, I wouldn't have been surprised to go over the mic and grab it. It reminded me of Coach Knight, who would go over there at times and maybe get after the crowd to hey knock it off or whatever. And
sure.
And I think something got thrown or a couple things got thrown one time, and he went over there and said, if you're sitting next to the guy who's throwing that crap on the floor, point him at the security and let's get him out of here. And I thought this might be the point at which Coach McCasland does that.
You'd have a lot of people pointing out because there was a lot of
100%
from different
because it felt like there was probably 7 or 8 things that hit the floor at some point. But I've wondered about, because there's a lot of traffic to the text line, and keep it coming. About kicking the people out who do that kind of stuff and kicking them out of all sporting events forever, and what's it going to do to quit them chanting F-bombs and all that kind of. Everybody's got an idea, and I'm not so sure, because you're walking a fine line there between doing all that you have to do to get attendance and to gin up energy from the students, period. And so
the passion side,
gotta have it. Absolutely, you gotta have it, and just to walk the line of pulling back on those reins in some way. The next time they chant F-bombs, we're kicking them all out. Any of that kind of stuff, I just don't. I don't see it, because the downside of that would be they just stay home and they're uninterested, and then that creates an entirely different thing. Because again, on this here text line, all the gnashing and whining from all the other fans going, why did the students leave at halftime? And so we're talking about, so the students, love it, like it or not, are the energy in there. And the Caleb Rogers experiment, I think, is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Just all of that. But I will say this, and hey, Ben, one of the all-time moments of a coach talking to his crowd was Billy Tubbs, and we actually got a little 15-second clip of this.
Number 5, Missouri and Oklahoma. Coach Tubbs upset with the crowd as well as the officials.
The referees request that regardless of how terrible officiating,
So what he said there is the referees have requested that regardless of how pitiful the officiating is, do not throw things on the floor. And so that's entertaining. And OU was getting beat in Norman about. I saw the little clip of it. They're down 19-5 or something. It's early, and Billy Tubbs was kind of the all-time whiner.
That'll be an SEC matchup next year.
Yeah, that's right. It'd be good for him. And one of the all-time whiner guys, like he was always, and so he would set a tone for his arena every game. The Sooner fans of that era for sure just gritched and moaned. How's that? There's a nicer way of just nonstop, because that's what their skipper did, and they had good teams in there.
Gritched. Keeping that one. It's Tech Talk here on Double T 97.3.
This has been the Tech Talk Podcast, presented by Cantex Roofing and Construction. Check out our library of Double T 97.3 podcasts at doublet97.3.com.